Ronnie Van Zant, the iconic frontman of Lynyrd Skynyrd, was a man who commanded attention. He was the heartbeat of the band, the fearless leader whose voice and persona defined Southern rock in the 1970s. But behind the powerful voice and unforgettable stage presence, Ronnie was also a complex figure, known for his sharp temper, volatile personality, and a leadership style that could only be described as fearsome. To truly understand Ronnie Van Zant, you have to look beyond the music and into the man himself, the rough edges, the moments of violence, the scolding, and the undeniable genius that shaped a generation of rock music, a Southern rock legend in the making, born in Jacksonville, Florida, in 1948, Ronnie Van Zant came from humble beginnings. He was raised in a working-class family, and from an early age, he was known for his toughness. Whether it was his upbringing in a rough neighborhood or his natural disposition, Ronnie quickly gained a reputation for being tough as nails. He didn't back down from a fight, and in many ways, this combative spirit shaped his approach to life and music. By the time he co-founded Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1964, Ronnie was already a force to be reckoned with. He had a vision for the band, a vision of Southern pride, raw energy, and uncompromising authenticity. Lynyrd Skynyrd wasn't just another rock band, they were the embodiment of the South. With all its contradictions, beauty, and grit, Ronnie made sure the band stayed true to that vision, even if it meant stepping on some toes. In many ways, Ronnie Van Zant was both the glue that held Lynyrd Skynyrd together and the fire that kept the band constantly on edge. His leadership style was direct, intense, and, at times, brutal. Ronnie didn't mince words. If a band member wasn't living up to his expectations, he'd let them know, often in no uncertain terms. His temper was legendary, and his confrontations with bandmates could be explosive. Ronnie didn't just scold, he scolded hard. If you were out of tune, missed a note, or didn't bring your A-game to rehearsals or performances, you were going to hear about it. This fearsome leadership extended beyond the music. Offstage, Ronnie kept a tight grip on the band's dynamics. He wanted everyone to understand that Lynyrd Skynyrd wasn't just a band, it was a way of life, and anyone who didn't live up to his standards was in for a rough time. One of the most infamous stories from the band's early days involves Ronnie getting into physical altercations with other members of the group. Guitarist Gary Rossington, in particular, found himself on the receiving end of Ronnie's temper more than once. The two would go head-to-head in heated arguments, and it wasn't uncommon for fists to fly. Ronnie wasn't afraid to knock someone down, literally or figuratively, if he thought it was for the good of the band. But here's the thing, as tough as Ronnie was, his fierce leadership came from a place of passion. He wanted the best for Lynyrd Skynyrd. He believed in the band and knew they could be great, and he wasn't willing to let anyone, including himself, settle for mediocrity. That drive, that relentless pursuit of perfection, is what pushed the band to the heights they eventually reached. Ronnie's temper wasn't just limited to the band. His life off stage was marked by a series of confrontations, many of which were fueled by his heavy drinking. Ronnie was known to have a love-hate relationship with alcohol. On the one hand, it fueled his wild, carefree persona, making him the life of the party. On the other hand, it often brought out the darker side of his personality, turning what might have been minor disagreements into full-blown brawls. It wasn't uncommon for Ronnie to get into fights at bars or backstage after shows. His reputation for violence grew alongside his fame. While some saw it as part of his tough Southern guy image, others, including those closest to him, worried that Ronnie's temper and drinking would ultimately lead to disaster. In fact, Ronnie's behavior often left the band walking on eggshells. They respected him, admired him, even feared him, but there was always an underlying tension. Would Ronnie blow up at someone tonight? Would there be another fight? Would the band survive another round of his unpredictable outbursts? Despite this volatility, or perhaps because of it, the music kept coming. The raw emotion that Ronnie brought to his personal life translated directly into the band's songs. Tracks like Free Bird, Simple Man, and Sweet Home Alabama weren't just anthems of Southern rock, they were reflections of Ronnie's complex inner world. The anger, the passion, the defiance, they were all there, woven into the fabric of Lynyrd Skynyrd's music. For all his rough edges, Ronnie Van Zant wasn't just about violence and anger. He was also a man who believed in discipline and hard work. He expected excellence not just from the band but from himself. And when Ronnie scolded, it wasn't always out of anger. Sometimes, it was his way of imparting tough love. He wanted his bandmates to be better musicians, better performers, better people. One story that stands out involves Ronnie scolding the band for partying too hard. They were young, famous, and living the rock and roll lifestyle, but Ronnie wasn't impressed. He reminded them that fame was fleeting, that they had to take their music seriously if they wanted to have a lasting legacy. This wasn't a gentle conversation. Ronnie's words hit like a hammer, but they stuck. He wanted Lynyrd Skynyrd to be remembered not just for their wild antics but for their music, their skill, and their integrity as artists. In a way, Ronnie was the father figure of the band, a strict, sometimes harsh, but ultimately wise leader who had the group's best interests at heart. He wasn't there to coddle or comfort. He was there to push them to be the best they could be, and if that meant some harsh words or bruised egos, so be it. For all his rough edges, Ronnie Van Zant wasn't just about violence and anger. He was also a man who believed in discipline and hard work. He expected excellence not just from the band but from himself. And when Ronnie scolded, it wasn't always out of anger. Sometimes, it was his way of imparting tough love. He wanted his bandmates to be better musicians, better performers, better people. One story that stands out involves Ronnie scolding the band. Tragically, Ronnie Van Zant's life was cut short in 1977 when Lynyrd Skynyrd's plane crashed in Mississippi, killing him along with 5 others. He was just 29 years old. But in those 29 years, Ronnie had already left an indelible mark on the world of music. He had led Lynyrd Skynyrd to become one of the most iconic rock bands of all time, and his voice and lyrics continue to inspire generations of fans. Despite his fearsome reputation, those who knew Ronnie best will tell you that there was much more to the man than his temper. Yes, he was tough, and yes, he could be violent. But he was also deeply passionate, fiercely loyal, and dedicated to his craft. He didn't just want Lynyrd Skynyrd to succeed, he wanted them to be legendary. And in the end, that's exactly what they became. Ronnie Van Zant's legacy is one of contradictions. He was a man of immense talent and vision, but also a man with demons that he struggled to control. He was both the source of the band's strength and, at times, its greatest challenge. But without Ronnie's leadership, his scolding, his fighting spirit, and his refusal to compromise, Lynyrd Skynyrd would never have become the band we know today. So, when you think of Ronnie Van Zant, don't just think of the violent outbursts or the harsh words. Think of the man who pushed his band to greatness, the man who believed in the power of music, and the man who left behind a legacy that will never be forgotten. Thank you for listening to the story of Ronnie Van Zant, a legend whose life and career remain as impactful as ever. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the lives of rock legends. And remember, sometimes the greatest artists come with the greatest complexities.